Well, I'm not normally one to do an unboxing, but I'm a little bit excited about this one. So I've ordered a PC-98 from Japan, and it's arrived today. So I thought, hey, let's open it together. All right, well, I've opened it upside down. That's okay. I'm not sure that bodes well. Well, let's see what we got. A little bit of broken plastic. Let's face it, it's come a long way. So, another bit of plastic. We'll keep them. Might be able to glue it back together. All right. And here we are. Absolutely filthy PC-98. It's the V13 model, which is more of a Windows model. It doesn't have all the cool stuff that people get PC-98s for. And it's obviously very, very yellow and very, very dirty. Now, I picked this one because it was really cheap. I think it was about 60 Australian dollars. And obviously it's got the Pentium processor, and it is a Windows 95 model, has a CD-ROM drive, only has one floppy drive, and apparently a lot of PC-9801 games require 2 floppies, but I've got plans. Let's have a look at the back. So what we can see on the back here is that we've got some ports that look very, let's say, PC, and some ports which look quite a bit different. Let's get a little bit closer. We've got our power for our AC 100 volts. I'm here in Australia, which is 240 volts, so plugging anything into there would make it go bang. My current plans for that is we'll pull the power supply out, see how hard it is to change the voltage on it. Likely to be too hard, so we might replace it with a more modern power supply. We've got our printer port, which is a weird mini Centronics style. I'm assuming that's going to be the same sort of pin out as your standard 25 pin parallel port. We've got the big serial port, which that was common back in the 80s, so it's really strange to see it on a machine from 1994. And we've got our keyboard and mouse, which they're quite a bit different from normal. Well, they look sort of like PS2, but you see that one's got 8 pins and that one's got 9 pins, so very different. We've got our 9-pin serial down the bottom here, which that would be common. Analog RGB, I'm hoping that's VGA compatible. I'm going to assume it is. And then it's got RGB and something has VGA in. And then up here, and then here we have a fax modem, because faxes and modems were popular in the mid-90s. But you can see here, it's not ISA, it's not PCI, which would be what would be in this era of PC. And it's a proprietary NEC standard called C-Bus. We can't actually see in there, but as we pull it apart, we will find out more. Although there is, hidden away in this slot, a PCI slot. I think our first step will be, let's get power into it, and then I've got an idea for the keyboard and mouse. Before we pull apart the PC-9821, let's have a talk a little bit about the history of the NEC computer range. Back in 1979, NEC released the PC-8001, which looks like this. It was essentially a response to the 8-bit computers by Commodore and Apple not being able to display kanji, which is Japanese written words. So it ran a Z80 clone clocked at 4 megahertz. It came with 16K of RAM, upgradable to 32, but the special sauce, I suppose, was the text VRAM, which had 3K text VRAM, which was a lot dedicated just for text. It only made beep noises. Compared to 8-bit computers around the world, it was nothing special, but because it was designed for the Japanese market, it really did take off in Japan. As I understand the history of it, because NEC, big company, they had their computer division and they had their home consumer goods division. The PC-8001 was designed by the consumer goods division because the computing division thought home computers would never take off. But when the 8001 did well, the consumer division followed it up with the PC-88. And this is a early PC-88 we're looking at. So this PC-88 still had the Z80 CPU, still clocked at 4 megahertz. It came with 64 kilobytes of RAM, 48 kilobytes of video RAM, and it sported two 5.25-inch floppy drives. Now, the thing that made this more exciting for the gaming audience was the inclusion of a YM2203 sound chip by Yamaha, allowing it to produce some really outstanding sounds. And the other thing about being able to display the Japanese character set, it's a lot more complex. It needs a high resolution. So a lot of the games, compared to other 8-bit platforms, applications for the PC-88 were much higher resolution and had very good sound quality. Now, the PC-88 first came out in 1985 and ran all the way up until 1989. As we can see with this model, this one actually has a PC Engine CD-ROM drive. So I'd have to say it's probably the first 8-bit computer on the market that supported CD-ROM. And then the computer division of NEC decided to get involved, and they came up with the PC-98. This was designed for the business market, and the first PC-98s came with a 8086, so an Intel processor, clocked at 5 megahertz, and it had two custom, let's call them graphics processors, clocked at 2.5 megahertz. But it only had an internal beep speaker. But the one thing it did introduce was the C-Bus slot. So you could take a C-Bus card from a PC-98, which came out in 1982, and then use it in a much newer PC-98. So that PC-98 we're looking at now has 3.5-inch floppy drives. It has an FM soundboard, so the same sound chip on the PC-88 on a C-Bus card. But this one has a 286 clocked at 10 megahertz, and the PC-9801 series went all the way up to about a 63 megahertz Pentium processor. And then we move on to the PC-9821. There's a bit of a blurry image. Most of them drop the second floppy drive as things go on. And the first ones of the PC-9821s came out in about 1992. Came with a 386 clocked at 20 megahertz. Now, the PC-9821 was called that because it was meant to be the PC-98 for the 21st century. And the PC-9821s lasted a long time. I think the last one made up until about 1997. So what I've got is the PC-9821 V13, which has a 133 megahertz Pentium in it. It came with 16 meg RAM with a maximum of 128 meg, Cirrus Logic video card, and Windows Sound, which really isn't much different from your standard sort of PC at the time. Now, it did maintain backwards compatibility with the PC-98 series, but a lot of things got broken because as Windows 95, 98 came out, Japanese users wanted to transition to that. And there are PC-9821 versions of Windows 95 and 98. So the PC-9821 V13 is of the value star range. And according to Google Translate, the advertising speak says, "With this, I will become an insider on the world," which I quite like. So now that we know a little bit about its history, let's start pulling it apart. Okay, let's start by taking all the screws out and see what falls out. Okay, there's our power supply, and that puts 21 amps on the 5-volt rail, 4 amps on the plus 12-volt rail, 10 amps on the 3.3-volt rail, and half an amp on the minus 12-volt rail, and 174 watts maximum. All right, if this can't be modified, I reckon we could probably find a replacement for that fairly easily. So let's pull out the modem. Okay, there it is, nice and dirty. Set up the right way. Nothing much of excitement there. So there they are. And they're on a riser card. So I suppose the next thing, we'll pull out the riser card. There's our PCI slot. Over there we've got the CPU. What looks like a cache module. That's interesting, I didn't know it had that. And there's our 16 megabytes of RAM. one point of interest is that we can see here that we've got the slot cover for the PCI slot. Actually included a nice little storage location for it, so I wouldn't go missing. How cool is that? Another interesting thing is that I'm not sure that's a standard floppy connector. It doesn't look quite right. It might be. We'll wait and see. Okay, we found a little lithium battery that was just taped on. So let's unplug that. I'm assuming that's dead as a doornail. Let's unplug the power supply. Standard AT style plug with a third plug, which I'm assuming is all the 3.3 volt. So like an AT one doesn't have soft power, so it's going to have to be the power supply is going to have to be disconnected from the power switch at the front. And I reckon that's the audio for the CD-ROM drive, so we'll try and unplug that, but it seems very well stuck. 2 screws in here to pull this C-bus cage out, or 4 screws. One good thing is it looks as if all the screws are the same. That's the C-bus cage out. We can get a proper look at the board. Okay, so that there, I'm going to guess, is our Windows audio, but it's also got the keyboard and mouse connector on it. And of course, being as modern this one is, it's in the sweaty hell that is flex cables. Hopefully none of them have gone too bad. You can see we've got a flex cable here for this little daughter board and a flex cable again for the front panel connector. Double-sided tape. Always with the double-sided tape. Pull that out nice and gentle. Let's pull the RAM out. NEC brand. We could probably get this. Oh, that's interesting. So this is what I was assuming was a cache module. It's got Sony chips on there. Sony's not known for making memory. It's not that I know of. Oh, let's put it in with the RAM. Let's have a go at pulling the drive cages out. Maybe we have to pull the front panel off. There you go. That came off pretty easy. There it is, but nothing looks damaged there. Oh, looks like the badge comes off. I suppose one of those things to make it so you can change the model easily. Okay, that feels like the CD-ROM drive's free. And it is. Well, now we can get to the last screw of the drive cage. Okay. Oh no, there we go. So let's pull the floppy drive out of the cage because it'll need to be serviced too. Okay, so let's get that screw there, and that should hopefully release our power switch and release the power supply. We're down to the board. Well, and the front panel. Let's go front panel first. Let's unplug the speaker, and that's the front LEDs. And that should slip out. Oh, and the fan, CPU fan. Let's wiggle that out slowly. There we go. I have to admit, I appreciate how modular this is for 1994. All right, now I reckon We can oh, that's a lot of dust. I reckon we can pull those LEDs out because it looks like they're all just in a plastic mount. That's the LEDs, and I reckon they have little tabs that hold the actual LEDs, and so you can remove them from the plastic, which is great for cleaning. But I'll leave it like that because I don't want to get mixed up to which LEDs goes on which side. All right, let's pull the audio connector out for the CD-ROM. Let's start pulling out the board itself. Actually, let's undo this while we're undoing stuff. Oh, it's got a washer. I reckon this will all come apart in one big go. A lot of screws. I'm glad I'm recording this, otherwise I don't think I'd be able to get it back together. That's the last one, I wonder. Oh, it is. All right. There we go. And that's the board out. So, good to know that that bit of rust got on the bottom there is a bit meaningless. Hopefully we can just clean all that off. Doesn't actually look to be any damage to the board whatsoever, other than being dirty. Obviously, I'll leave the CPU in there for safekeeping for now, but I will pull that out and repaste it and make sure everything works. Fan seems fine. Well, it's good clean. All right, so the next step is let's start cleaning everything up. Okay, so we've got some hot soapy water. Everything else in that bag is just broken bits of plastic, so I don't think I'll bother washing them because I don't want to lose them. Now to get a few of the last deeper marks off, just a bit of a wet rub with a melamine sponge. Okay, now we're going to give the board a clean with some isopropyl alcohol to get the dust off, and probably spray it with some contact cleaner. Let's get this CPU off. Only a thermal pad underneath. That's a bit shoddy. Okay, so now we've given it all a good clean. We'll put all the connectors and that. Give them a bit of a spray with electrical lube. That's my electrical lube empty, but that's looking pretty nice. So as far as the plastics go, I do the old school method of retrobrighting, where I just get the hydrogen peroxide and the cream hair colouring stuff, smear it on in a reasonably thick layer, wrap it in Glad wrap, and nice hot sunny days, so it's out on the concrete. I wrapped a baking tray in foil and stuck it underneath. Just maybe that makes a difference. Who knows? Went out there, massaged it about every 20 minutes for a couple of hours. And the result came up pretty good. The only real thing that didn't work as well as I'd hoped is the CD-ROM drive. It came out a little bit mottled. I think just a different sort of plastic didn't take to it super well. It looks bad there when it's freshly done, but it did actually calm down a few days after, and you can barely see it now. I washed all the metal components as well. We can see there's a couple of spots of rust on the base. There was nothing on the board, so I'm assuming this must have just been external rust, so as in like it was stored upside down, water dripped on it. Who knows? So washed all that, dried it all up. Then I discovered that there was a bit of rust under the vinyl wrap of the top case. And let's just go, how crazy is it that NEC used a vinyl wrap instead of just painting it beige? Seems bizarre. But either way, I peeled it back a little bit further, sanded down the rust, used a bit of zinc-rich paint on it. So you can see that it looks like I've cut the vinyl off. I haven't, I've just folded it back. Sanded back the rust and gave the base a bit of a spray too, just to inhibit any further rust developing. So that's about it. Next step will be, let's glue the broken plastic parts all back together. Okay, let's start repairing all the broken plastic pieces. This is the floppy drive cover, which is by far the most damaged. So let's get started. Okay, there's still this piece, but I'm not sure where it's from. Looks like it's from a floppy drive. Oh well, I'll keep it in my plastics and we'll see where we go. Maybe I'll find it. I did find it. It came off the eject button from the floppy drive. Unfortunately, more tiny little bits were broken off, so it was very hard to glue back together. But I managed to get it. It works. It doesn't sit quite as straight as it should, but it works. That's the important part. All right, let's put everything back together. drive a quick test. That works. I think I glued the stuff back on the floppy drive button. A little bit crooked, but it works, so good enough for Australia. This might be going a little bit overboard for considering I still haven't tested it yet. Don't want things to go missing. I have to admit, aside from the floppy button, everything that I've glued is holding up pretty well. Obviously, still need to put the mount for the power button in, but we need to decide what I'm going to do with the power supply first. Alright, there we go. So far we're looking at a lot cleaner, and all we need to do before we can do our initial test is sort out power. So stay tuned for the next video where we'll look at the power supply and see what we can come up with. Alright, thanks for watching.